So I'm going to rebuild this. The reason why I had to build this is because mini bike wheels are super expensive. It's ridiculous that I have to pay $30 for a hub and then buy $100 wheels for a mini bike, where I could buy these things for pretty cheap. The problem is no one makes hubs for these to fit mini bikes. So I've come up with a little solution. I had a mini lathe and a mini mill from little machine shop, but I would not recommend it. You really can't do anything with them. They're too small, and even though you're paying a premium price, you still have to lap them, you have to clean them, and it's not really something you could use straight out of box. And basically any type of those lathes and mills, it's really a machinist toy to play with. You can't really be too productive on them, and they're small. So I've decided this is my second version of this. It's a lathe slash grinder, cheapo Bauer Harbor Freight router with a carbide bit, 5-inch chuck. We got some bearings, 5/8 shaft, welded angle iron. And what this allows me to do is it has 3 mounting points, 1, 2, 3, so I can move this whole thing forwards and backwards. And basically this spins. You spin it like a lathe with your hand while this does its boring inside. And believe it or not, this is a pretty accurate setup. So this is a Wen, I think 4-inch vise, and these are just generic collars, generic bearings, and a shaft. This is a 1/4-inch plate that I had to grind down with a angle grinder, so I put an angle grinder in here, and without the chuck I would just spin this and make sure that this is all flush. So I got this pretty good within, I would say, 0.02 of an inch. And now I'm working on these hubs, right? So I've made lots of mistakes. I wasted a lot of time and material trying to make these. So the idea is to mount these, make these pretty much go like this. And you mount your sprocket and your brake hubs or whatever you need to mount to these, but these you have to make yourself. They don't make these, and when they do, they're super cheap and they don't work. These are generic bearings, 5/8, and they come with the step on them so they don't fall through. So I've made lots of mistakes trying to make these hubs, as you could see in my spare bins part. Not spare bins, this is really trash, but I tried welding these on. So I tried welding these on and they warp like crazy, right? So first I tried with 64th inch 0.063 tubing, and they would warp 1/8 inch material here for the hubs, and these would warp like crazy. So what I end up doing is, I tried chill bars, I tried pretty much everything. I tried TIG welding, pulse welding, it didn't matter. These things would always warp. I even went as far as getting aluminum blocks. They're here somewhere. So I got these aluminum blocks that would just I would just put on here like this, and I would weld these. Hopefully they wouldn't warp. They still would warp. So the final solution was to just step up to my material size. So now this is 120 wall, and these are 3/16. And they seem to be pretty dang straight. Definitely enough material on here to put a grinder on here and make these straight. However, I have to bore these holes out now And this is doing great. However, since this shaft is only 5/8 of an inch solid stock bar, what happens is I get a lot of chatter because there's not enough rigidity here. So if you could see, the lighting's kind of bad, but there's a ton of play here. So the goal is to rebuild this whole bed here with this little tower, let's call it, and replace this with 1.5-inch pipe, which is what this is made out of. And I got these big bearings today from Amazon. They were only like 20 bucks for 2, but just look at the difference. So we're gonna rebuild this whole thing. I'm gonna try to video as much as I can, and we'll go from there. So we can fit those trailer wheels onto a mini bike build. Now I've been trying to build these, going crazy as you can see, trying to cut stuff out, trying different techniques, and this is the final solution without buying a huge lathe, which I don't really want anyways, because I will not be sitting here machining things, because one, it takes forever, and it's not very practical to make these little parts. This grinder has worked well in the past, that I've made one before with an 8-inch chuck. However, it was really big and clumsy and heavy, and I couldn't move around. This was pretty easy to move around. It's accurate enough to bore this out to fit a bearing in here, and then to put a grinder in there and just make this flat. So the goal is to build a mini bike out of raw materials, which is 1/8 tubing, not 1/8, 1 inch and 1.5-inch tubing, which I have here somewhere, and build pretty much everything from the ground up, minus the clutch, minus the sprocket, minus the motor and the wheels. And we're going to be using these trailer wheels that you could get cheap from Harbor Freight or Amazon, adapting them, and that's that. This is the first step though, and this is the hardest thing so far with this build. I'm not worried about building the frame, the hubs, anything centric like that. Super hard without a lathe, but I don't want a lathe. I already had them. I had the mini lathes, and like I said, to me they're a waste of money, and this is accurate enough. All right, stay tuned.